My name is Jacqueline Keeler, and this talk is part of the Bedrock Lectures on human rights and climate change. In February, I got to go to the Bakken to report on the search for Olivia Lone Bear, a 33-year-old Native American mother of four who has been missing since October 25th, 2017. Her family is still searching for her. In fact, they just put a camp up to continue the search into the summer. It's now going on the 7th month of looking for Olivia. The reservation that they're searching is over 1 million acres. It is also encompasses 1/3 of the Bakken, which is a shale formation and is heavily fracked for oil. And in fact, the reservation, according to the U.S. Geological Survey, holds between 4.4 and 11.4 billion barrels of oil. In 2014, the tribe actually pumped 330,000 barrels per day, which is just slightly less than the state of Oklahoma. When I drove across the Fort Berthold Reservation, Olivia was heavily on my mind, and I had read the reports about how serious the threats to Native women in particular in the Bakken, and with the oil fields and the oil workers and the man camps and the lack of jurisdiction the tribe has over non-tribal members. It really was it is a recipe for abuse. And I have to say that when I visited the bars and things that she used to go to, I really got a sense of just how dangerous those situations could be to a young woman. And in fact, when I was at the Four Bears Casino, I was talking to a young bartender there, and she told me that she's from Southern California, and she told me that her and her girlfriends don't go out at all. They just party in their apartments. And so women live a very circumscribed life there, and it was very very interesting to realize that there's still this sort of situation going on in America. The this this wealth that it has brought the tribe is what former chairman Tex Hall called sovereignty by the barrel. And in 3 years, the tribe was able to pay off $100 million debt that they had. However, I'm not sure this is the kind of path envisioned by former Chief George Gillette in 1948 when he signed away 150,000 acres of land on the reservation for the construction of the Garrison Dam, which flooded the best farmland on the reservation. And if you've seen photos of him signing that, you see him just absolutely in tears, crying. And it was quite a difficult day for the tribe, and for all the tribes up and down the Missouri River who were all targeted by the Army Corps of Engineers. Their land was the land that was put underwater, not white farmers, and over 2,000 Native American farmers lost their farms. It is into this landscape that Olivia Lone Bear was born, and if you drive down Highway 23 and near where she grew up, you see all the oil flares going off at night. I describe it in the article as having a hellish aspect. And when I was interviewing folks, many of them talked about how they felt that the oil boom had turned sort of their beautiful rural reservation into sort of a hell. And definitely when we look at the man camps and trafficking and assaults on women and girls versus the jobs, the money, and the royalties, they must be weighed against the environmental devastation. And in fact, some tribe members had told me that they were hoping that the tribe actually was saving money because they may need to buy another reservation after they trash this one. So that is quite chilling. It's particularly chilling for me because I have this whole theory that I talk a lot about. I give this lecture about how the U.S. is still a colony, right? And we all know what a colony is. And but the colony, basically, I make the proposal that America never stopped being a colony, even after it fought its revolution to free itself from its homeland, which is Great Britain. So my proposal is that they change the name to a nation, but it still behaves as a colony. If you ever want to predict what the United States is going to do, you simply have to think, what would a colony do? And what does a colony do? A colony goes to other people's homelands, right? This is not the homeland of the United States. These are other nations, other people's homelands, and including the Mandan Hidatsa people on the Fort Berthold Reservation. And they extract. They take the wealth as quickly as possible, the colony does, colonists do, and sends that wealth back to their ruling class, their 1%. And this is really the model that the U.S. runs on. And I go into more detail in my lecture about the colonies originally starting out as corporate entities, as joint stock companies, and certainly giving corporations like TransCanada and Energy Transfer Partners, which own the Keystone XL and Dakota Access pipelines, respectively. Giving them governmental powers of eminent domain is actually a return to the origins of the colonies themselves, which were corporately owned and given governmental powers by the Crown. But a people, an indigenous people, I have this sort of definition that I've kind of stolen from my grandmother's cousin, Vine Deloria Jr. And a people are tied to indigenous people are tied to a specific landscape, unlike corporations, and they are defined by the relationship to the land and not by its exploitation. So the definition I give for a people, an indigenous people, which is what many of our nations call what we call ourselves, is the people. Like Navajo means the people, right? And so, but a people's origin story is not a corporate origin story or a profit-driven origin story. A people's origin story is tied to a meeting with a spiritual being who is a manifestation of the land itself. And in this meeting, the people are given rules, are given laws on how to live with the land and how to live with all the other people, meaning the four-leggeds, the two-leggeds, the winged ones, and the green-growing things, and those that swim in the ocean. And, an example would be my father's people, the Dakota people, the Dakota Lakota people. And with the meeting of the white buffalo calf woman, they became Dakota. My grandfather used to say, we were not Dakota until we met the white buffalo calf woman. And then when we met her, we were Dakota. Before that, we were something else. And so meeting the white buffalo calf woman, who is a manifestation of the Great Plains itself and the Buffalo Nation, and she gave us the pipe, the chalupa, and she made us a people. And that relationship made us a people, to a specific place on earth, the Great Plains. And the same thing for my mother's people, the Navajo people, the Dene people, which are the Four Corners area in the Southwest is sacred to us, and our homeland, which we call the Nepekeya. And we were met by the holy people and given the corn, the nada, and the songs, and how to live in harmony in that place. I titled the article No Crime Scene, about Olivia Lone Bear, the search for Olivia Lone Bear, because the family, when they went to the police and tried to file a missing persons report, were told by the tribal police that because there was no crime scene, that they could not file a missing persons report. And I talked to various folks, and this turned out to be untrue, different law enforcement people. But this shows the great difficulty families have in really taking on this task of finding their loved one, often without a lot of direction or help from law enforcement or from people you would expect to be there for them. I begin the article, contrasting the Hollywood portrayal of the search for missing and murdered Indigenous women, MMIW. And although I'm very glad that there is a Hollywood film, Wind River, that features the issue and brought attention to it, the Tarantino shootout with bad guys, the oil workers living in the man camps, and the immediate discovery of the body of the girl is really not what most families experience. In fact, there often is no body, and certainly the tribal police and the FBI are not out there taking bullets for them, and there is no resolution often. And And really, they're almost gaslighted, I would say, being told that she just wandered off, even if it's a mother with 4 children, and the family feel like it's not probable. They will still be told this about their loved one, and the law enforcement will refuse to assist them. So, in addition, there is no reliable database of names or even numbers of missing murdered Indigenous women, and in some places, like I was talking to folks working on this issue in Arizona, and they told me that often the state will refuse to identify the murdered woman as Native unless they bring a copy of her certificate of Indian blood, which is a federal document that says that this person has Indian blood. Otherwise, they'll mark her down as white, and this way they suppress the actual numbers. But the data we do have is pretty frightening, and overall, the crime statistics that we have, the Department of Justice has, which are not, I would say, are not accurate probably, but and need more data, but do show that Native women have between 2.5 times the rate of murder and rape of other women of any race in this country, and also, in some counties, they have up to 9 times the rate of murder. So Native women are incredibly vulnerable, a vulnerable population, and certainly on the reservation itself, they are even more vulnerable because the tribe does not have jurisdiction over non-Indians. So that means people can come in and often, the FBI will decline to, I think, over 70% of the cases they decline to prosecute, and the sheriffs, will often not get involved because of the jurisdictional question. And on the Fort Berthold Reservation, this is even more difficult because there are actually 6 counties that intersect on that reservation, so there are 6 sheriffs, and nobody really knows who has jurisdiction often. So it's very difficult to get help when they actually try to seek help. And criminals, people who want to harm Native women, know this, and often will come to reservations to knowing that they'll get away literally with murder. The price of oil has gone down since the high of $126.68 per barrel in 2008. Today it's a little over, I think, $60 per barrel. And but the $50 is often cited as the break-even point. So, and but with the profit, whether you're talking $10 or you're talking $60, how much of that profit actually goes to cover the costs the community bears, and what price is the community paying that is not being actually covered by these profits? So the question is, where is the value in the land? Is it in money or the people? In The Edge of Morning, Native Voices Speak for the Bears' Ears, I addressed this question, what is the best use of the land? I edited this book and also conducted the interviews for it. But what I really wanted to deal with was often when I was talking to supporters of mining and opponents to the National Monument, they often would say jobs, mining, we need mining for jobs. So I really wanted to tackle this question, is the value of the land in jobs? Is the value of the land in extractive industries like mining? And what is the value of culture compared to the resources that can be mined from the land? The book itself is an examination of the value of sacred places and spaces like Bears' Ears and preservation of cultural artifacts and traditional culture. So I compare the mining from the Potosi silver mines in Bolivia, where literally thousands of indigenous and stolen African people were worked to death. And despite all of this wealth coming in from the silver mines, King Philip of Spain still declared bankruptcy 3 times, and Spain is still struggling today. So, but what is the value of cultural exchange between, and I look specifically at the cross-cultural exchange that occurred between the English colonies and the Iroquois Confederacy. So, I'm not sure if any of you are aware, but the western boundary of the Iroquois the western boundary of the 13 colonies was the Iroquois Confederacy. Basically, you can see that right along the Appalachian Mountains there. everything west of there was the Iroquois Confederacy. So there was a lot of cross-cultural exchange that happened between the Iroquois Confederacy and the colonists. And one of these things was the very origins of the United States is often traced to the speeches given by the Taidaho, the traditional leader of the Iroquois Confederacy. These speeches were printed by Benjamin Franklin, and they were bestsellers at the time, and they were read by the whole generation of the founding fathers. And these were speeches given at treaties signed between the state of Pennsylvania and the Iroquois Confederacy. Benjamin Franklin had the contract to print these treaties for the state of Pennsylvania. And but they articulate these speeches. If you read them, you'll see they articulate indigenous ideas of democratic rule, and seeing living democracies all around them really inspired the colonists. They were an ocean away from feudal Europe, and really inspired them to consider other forms of government. And of course, also the history of the English Civil War played a part as well, which I examine in my next book, Standoff, where I compare the Bundy takeovers to Standing Rock, which will be coming out next year in March. So, and then in women's rights, it's no accident the first women's rights conference was in Seneca Falls, New York, adjacent to a Seneca village. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and they were inspired by what they saw with the Seneca women. They actually saw them reorganize their government. They could see in the village next to them that women had rights that they did not possess. Women were legally dead under U.S. law at that time. And so they began to say, we want what we see these women have. It's not this pipe dream, it can actually happen. And you can read in the speeches, they specifically say, we want what the Iroquois women have. And these two examples of cross-cultural exchange produced ideas that made billions of people's lives better. Often I tell my children my husband is Iroquois, Mohawk, and Seneca, I often tell them that because of your ancestors and the cultural ideas that they shared, literally billions of people have better lives today. And so what is the value in that? I mean, what would be the monetary value that cross-cultural exchange gave to people today? I think it would far exceed the Potosi silver mines and any other mining that might take place. So looking at this definition of a real people versus colonists, and so Native people, I think that the Bakken has changed the relationship for a real people, the Mandan Hidatsa Rikara people, to the land. And the question is, how are they going to manage this? And I see Olivia's life and her disappearance and her family's frantic search to find her as a real metaphor for that. How are they going to find their way? How are they going to stay a real people, a family, and stay tied to the land? There's that old saying where people are not finished until their women's hearts are in the ground. And with missing and murdered Indigenous women, I certainly see this as an issue that begs the question of how are we going to remain a people, even as we try to meet our economic needs today. I definitely urge you to read my article. Thank you.